All right, everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Commercial Real Estate morning show, even though it's evening for Paul. It's morning where we
That's
are.
about lunchtime. Yeah, go on.
Welcome. We're going to talk today through the latest in real estate news. But before we get there, I do need to say a couple of thanks. So this is a show sponsored by the U.S. PropTech Council. It is streamed on YouTube and now Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcasty places. We are sponsored by Lerner and Associates and my company called Facilimax. And I'm just super happy that we have this show and it's growing and it's really super groovy cool. So today my guests are David Auerbach and Paul Sheedy. Deanie Taylor is not in the house today because he's doing really hard work golfing. He's golfing. He's at a golf tournament. I'm sure it's for a good cause. But very cool. So the first story I want to talk about, this was posted out in it was in Commercial Real Estate News. The Real Capital Analytics just posted out their CPI measure, which basically measures the actual price movements for commercial properties. So there's been this whole thing around prices for commercial properties. Obviously, offices in the tank, right? They've lost a significant value, but basically, this story says that pricing resumes decline, but fares better than a year ago. So I think everybody's trying to call the bottom. I don't know what y'all think, but basically from a year ago, prices July over July had dropped about 10 to 11 points. Not basis points, but points, like 10 to 11% prices had dropped. And then now what they're saying is that this July, it's only dropped like 0.3%. So I think they're trying to call the bottom. I know there's different, obviously they're talking about the apartment sector has dropped about 8.4%. Industrial was the only shining star of the year. It's actually, prices have jumped 9% year over year, industrial has. So they seem to be faring better. But so we'll see. I don't know if it's all coming out in the wash because industrial saving day. I just wanted to throw that out to everybody. I'm sure they're trying to call the bottom. I don't know. But I don't think we're out of this. That's just my half a nickel. I don't think we're out of this situation. I think the prices are going to go up and down for the next couple of years. I don't know. What do you think, Paul? What are you seeing over there?
I think if for many companies they see that they're not getting growth and maybe the work at home thing isn't working as well as they want, there's got to be a bit of a return. I did notice, again, I mean, we often take these stories, the myriad every day of them, that Dallas, Fort Worth, there was a data showing that more people were going back to work in Dallas, Fort Worth than before. My gut feeling is I think we're going to see more people sort of trickle back in. Certainly today is sort of the first. We had a bank holiday in London yesterday. Today was a Tuesday. It just seemed far busier today than normal. We're getting to the end of the school holidays. I think a lot of people will be glad to get away out of the house and get back to work in some normality in September. I think September is going to be a key point. If by the end of September we still see the figures flat, and look, I have my finger on that pulse. Let me tell you, like no one else, I see the data coming in, and we from the work we do predictive analysis. We know what the impact of a bank holiday is going to be. We know what the impact of good weather is going to be on occupancy. So we've taken this to a new level. So I will keep you in the loop on what we see happening. My good feeling is by end of September, we're going to see more people coming back. And I think it'll stay. I don't think the end of the office is over yet. It's transforming. I think the problem for the office is, as we all know, interest rates are too high. It's too low, costs are too high in terms of energy. Here in the Europe end up sort of 500%. So there's big problems. But I'm actually a little bit optimistic on this one. And of course, we're seeing life science. I did see something last week and this week again on life sciences where we're seeing a change in the valuations. Areas that are now being deemed not going to be the golden triangles, the golden place to have your life sciences are dropping. We see the prices of life sciences in some of these gifted areas rising higher again. So it's an interesting space to be.
Yeah.
And data centers, oh my God, they're just going to go out of control. In fact, that's something we're going to have a serious talk about. I had Fordham University in last Friday give a big speech about 100 of their master students here in London. They're over here for a week on sustainability, and I had to give them some very, very hard facts about how bad things were going on data centers and the energy usage, and how it's a problem, a really big problem.
Yeah, I will get Howard Berry in here, who is the National Data Center guy for Avis and Young, and I'll have him come in there. But I think it would be a good for us to have a topic on that specifically. We'll bring it in. And Ralph Rodriguez, who he's a part of the council too, and he basically is like an energy broker for data centers. That's what his livelihood is. And so he goes, tries to find them in. So they're very tied up in the whole data center and kind of how it's working. So I will bring him in here. And yeah, I mean, but that is worth a conversation, right? I mean, I don't know how, especially on as more so Elon Musk just built his own data center, and it's very AI based. They're all racing, all the billionaires are racing to have their AI data center, like their own little, like it's like keeping up with the Joneses. It's not, we're not going to go buy yachts now. No, we're not going to buy yachts. We're going to get our own AI data centers, because that's the what is it, the luxury thing du jour.
Mhm.
Like, I guess if you have your own AI data center, then I guess you've arrived. I don't know. But does AI it pulls about 20% more or 20 times more energy than a regular data search does. So they're using a ton of energy. And so, yes, I think that's going to be definitely a thing. In the US also, they just recognized, it was amazing to me that the government actually recognized something, that they were going to have to upgrade their electrical grid, and they already passed money to do that. I think they're a little bit behind the eight ball a little bit, but they're recognizing that they have to spend money on the grid. I mean, otherwise it's not gonna, it's
It's
not.
complete chaos. It's the same here. I think I mentioned to you already. We can get it. The renewables are there. We just can't get it on the grid. There isn't the ability to get that energy onto the main grid. And the more you get into this, and I mean it, the more complex it really gets. It's a massive issue. Really a big one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
I
for
got a
sure.
couple of points to add here.
Yeah, go for it.
Obviously, when you look at it from the world of some of these publicly traded companies, especially on the REIT side, you've got Digital Realty based down by you in Austin. You have Equinix, and then obviously Blackstone, BREIT and some of their investment vehicles, Blackstone, who acquired QTS a couple of years ago. Obviously these are three massive data center players, and they're regularly putting out content talking about, the amount of data center demand that's out there. Obviously, as you mentioned, the AI stuff, there's been a lot of articles recently highlighting AI data center growth outlook, and, Amazon and Microsoft, Intel. In fact, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal last week that had that data center AI impact article. And then part two, going back to your RCA comments, Green Street put out some very similar comments in the past couple of days as well, that basically echo a lot of those things that RCA was saying. And, I agree that we're going to see still a bunch of volatility, but I still think there is pockets inside each of these sectors and stories, as a whole. Obviously, office seeing some struggles, but then, if you start peeling back the layers of the onion, a lot of these office landlords are leasing like crazy. People are going back to the office. It's not all necessarily doom and gloom, especially in certain locations. But
Right.
that being said, like as I mentioned, I still think we are going to see volatility on a sector by sector, asset by asset, city by city basis. But in the bigger picture, the market's already priced in at least a 25 basis point cut here in a couple of weeks. My
Yeah.
opinion, again, I have nothing to back this up. This is just my opinion. If they only cut 25 basis points, I think the market is going to sell off, because I think they're going to be disappointed that they didn't do more. If they do cut 50, I do expect to see obviously a rally, which does bode well for REITs, commercial real estate, et cetera, because the cost of lending, the cost of borrow, et cetera, becomes cheaper. So, obviously things are setting up to, as you mentioned, try to call this bottom. But if you try to call the bottom, all that you can do is be wrong.
I
And
know.
so, You know,
Yeah.
it's like you find this great, you know, date the mortgage, buy the house. You know, you can always refinance the mortgage. And so if you like the
Yeah.
asset or whatever it is, buy the asset, date the loan, and then refinance a year or two from now if you're really that enamored with the asset. I mean, let's not make a mountain out of a molehill when we know that there are changes afoot. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
feel you. I feel you for sure. And I think people are going to take this opportunity so to dip their toes into other asset classes that they might not necessarily have been before. I mean, I think people will chase data centers that are, you know, that they really haven't done it. Ari Rostiger, he's here in Austin. He's a larger owner. I think he manages in about, I don't know, 16 states and about 38 cities. And he was quoted recently talking about how, I mean, he owns a lot of office, he owns a lot of industrial, he owns some multifamily, but he's like, his focus is data centers, right? Data centers and cold storage. I'm not what sure of the cold store. I guess it's because all the distributed people are getting like more food delivery and that kind of things. But those are the two things that he's kind of looking at. And I was
Well,
like, makes sense, you know.
cold storage has had one hell of a year. There's an article actually published in the Journal Online today.
Mhm.
Lineage listed the largest REIT IPO this year. It literally became the largest REIT overnight in terms of market cap when they priced their
Wow.
IPO because it's a global cold storage player.
Mm,
And you know, we've talked about um, multiple times, going back to our clubhouse days,
yeah.
looking at the growth overseas, the stuff where Paul is going to be traveling over to in the next, you know, several weeks. When you look at some of these emerging nations, emerging markets, Middle East, Egypt, India, Africa, the list goes on and on. That is the growth opportunity for a lot of these
exactly.
cold storage players, an Americold, a Lineage, et cetera. And
Hmm.
same thing with towers and data centers going into these emerging markets. Go pull up an earnings report from Equinix or Digital, and you know they spend half the earnings release talking about their overseas growth, their overseas capital deployment,
Interesting.
because of what happens when you plop a data center into Ghana, hypothetically, or a
Right.
cell tower is placed into, you know, a village in small rural India, and what it does bringing these people, this population, frankly, into the modern times.
Right.
So again, not that I know anything, I would say we're still in the second or third inning when it comes to emerging market growth for a lot of these players, data centers, towers, cold storage,
Yep.
industrial, et cetera.
Yep.
Part two of that, we've got friggin' drone delivery here now, right? So you place an order from a restaurant, they drop it on your doorstep within a
Right.
certain radius, or
Right.
CVS or Amazon packages and stuff. The goal is to be as close as you can to that distribution facility, that distribution location, and it's
Hmm.
getting closer and closer and closer and closer to where you live, which means the footprint, technically the warehouse footprint, would be getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Just to be able to facilitate some of these products to get to your doorstep. Think about an Amazon distribution facility versus a Walgreens distribution facility, right? Two
Right.
completely different footprints, but the goal is to get to the customer as quick as they possibly can. And again, I don't know what it's like in London for Boots to deliver to, you know, somebody on Mayfair Street or whatever it is. If, you know, again, if they're utilizing drones and all this other stuff, if that distribution, that, you know, last mile, as they call it, basically,
Yeah.
is last mile getting closer and closer to that end consumer, like it is here domestically.
It is. I mean, the CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority, are working really, really rapidly on this. There's a lot of work going on. I mean, even they've been working on some pilots for blood. You know, how quickly can we move blood from one hospital to another hospital? You know, and is it going to impact the quality of the blood? In fact, the results came back perfectly fine. There's a lot going on here. Um, and the weather, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
issue with all of this is what happens in really bad weather or high. And I work on, you know, a very, very tall, 39th floor of the building. You know, we have days when I am above the fog in London, right? And below me, above me, it's blue sky, below me is fog. But these things are going to impact everything. I know they're getting more and more sophisticated, but heavy winds, heavy rain, fog, etc. How do these things really affect? We don't know yet. We are getting very, very, very close. It'll also be a case of how does this affect, you know, how are people around this
Right.
stuff, and For example, in countries where people are more civilized than others, smart bikes, by car works great. Where people have got a proportion of the society who are just lunatics, they'll just throw bikes in the middle of nowhere. That you've got to look at how things are going to happen here. And what would happen? What my worry is, what happens that first time when a drone goes and does something that wrong and it crashes into somebody. That impact is always bigger. I mean, it's like we all know flying is the safest mode of travel, but it's the one that people fear the most, right? It's objective. What I was going to say to you there, David, just interesting you picked a particular country because I'm advising that government right now on energy. But setting up a data center in, for example, Ghana, the issues you actually have there are Ghana has a power cut every single day, pretty much now, as is Zambia, as is Zambia, as South Africa. And actually, a lot of work I'm trying to do with these governments is what we can do to look at how we bring in scenarios to reduce their energy load massively and save them money. And that's some of the work I'm doing, which is really moving on. And this is where we have to look at things holistically. You can't just, I mean, for example, if I give you an idea, Ireland now uses more energy on data centers than every household in the country. That's just bizarre. The UK is going to go from 13
Wow.
trilliwatts to 35 trilliwatts, but trillion watts by 2035. Don't quote me that, but I know it's a 300% increase of the next sort of 10 or so years because of the amount of data we're using. It's going to become a massive, massive, massive issue. Energy is a problem.
Yeah.
Paul, you brought back a memory for me. You saw me get so animated and excited there a second ago. I had the privilege to do a business trip to Johannesburg and Cape Town in October of 2022 and got to experience load shedding in person, where you're working, things are humming along, and then boom, everything shuts down. Like the power just goes out, everything shuts down. You could be down for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 3 hours, who knows? But load shedding was a big issue. And hearing you talking about this right now just got me all fired up because I'm thinking about these data center guys. And what do you do when you go into Johannesburg? You set up a data center and boom, there's a load shed. When the thing shuts down for 2 hours, your data center is inoperable. You basically now you can't run stuff. And even the backup generators, I was told by some folks, are a symptom of the load shedding issue. That even great, you have a Generac generator in your backyard, big deal. The load shed's the load shed. You have no power. And so I find it very interesting. I'm curious about how some of these folks handle that situation, because I've heard load shedding is an issue for so many years. And there is no fix on the horizon from that I've been told, that it's almost like a continent-wide issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. I was just going to say,
go.
I know some of the data centers are getting into power generation. They're building their own little mini power plants on site so that they can, provide enough power to keep their data center running. And some of them, it's actually becoming a requirement by the municipalities that they build these power generation things for themselves, right? They don't want them to pull off the grid. I just find it really super interesting. And there's just a big push for everyone to go nuclear, right? And to go to nuclear energy, and they're like rebranding it. Like everybody that's, our age remembers Chernobyl, but nobody else younger than us remembers Chernobyl. So they're like, it's all turning green. Nuclear is green.
Well, honestly, it's just, if Bill Gates had been allowed to go ahead with TerraPower, as he was so close, he was there at President Xi several times. It was about to be launched right across China, who were very interested in having these localized, many, many, many hundreds of these localized TerraPower systems by Bill Gates put in place. And it was just such a shame that, the usual politicians get in the way and stopped. But I think it will happen, and it's got to happen. And the whole thing about where we're going, wind power isn't a solution, solar isn't a solution, nuclear. It's a combination of all of them together, because you can, on a dull, mild day, you can't get wind power, you can't get solar. There is no magic solution, and we've all got to start thinking about the impact of too much energy in certain days, too little in other days, and battery storage isn't just not going to be the be all and end all. It's a very, very complex system. And actually, in many ways, what I'm glad about is that John Kerry and Chris Skidmore launched this global climate coalition because they're looking at each country and what worked for them, and then spreading that to countries that have a similar, maybe, climate or particular issues that are there, that they can say, look, Beth, this is what happened in this country. In hindsight, they wish they did it like this, but this is fast track you to actually to sort these global situations out. But it's a big issue. Yeah.
So they're knowledge sharing between countries, which is
Yeah.
super.
Yeah. Bipartisan, non-political. We don't care what. It's just about facts, what actually happens. And actually, one thing I said to the Minister for Ghana in Ghana was, look, let us sort out your power issues and you might stay in power. If you don't sort them out, you won't be in power. I think he got that. That little nugget went down very well. Anyway.
Ghana is not sponsoring this podcast today, just for the
No,
record. We're
Ghana
getting a
is
lot
not
of coverage.
sponsoring the podcast. But I will say I have a good relationship with the National Housing Construction Corporation in Ghana. I know them very well, and we're working on providing them kind
Don't
of.
tell me you know my other friend Cyril.
No, I know Lillian. Do you know Lillian?
I don't know Lillian. No.
Yeah,
I know.
Cyril's probably a project manager at NHCC, but Lillian runs their marketing and sales at
The
NHCC.
Green Buildings Council. So I was thinking about the Green Buildings Council in Ghana.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, no, it's great. And so they're focused on solving the affordable housing crisis, or the housing crisis, and just in general housing crisis that's happening there, which is kind of interesting.
Actually, Amy, we talked about this whole modular housing. I think Africa is where this is really going to take off. I think Africa is not going to doesn't have that. As I said to you here in the UK, it's biblical, the compliance and the whole planning scenarios here. But I actually think Africa is one of those countries where they can go, you know what, we do need 500,000, 1 million homes, and actually let's just go and do this and mass manufacture a number of styles of house and get it done. I've already seen it happen twice now in a couple of countries in Africa where they've really just taken to a new level. And I think we are making a lot of mistakes in the West because we're inefficient and we take too long to make decisions. And I think Africa is going to leapfrog us quite substantially. And I really do believe that Africa in the next 2 or 3 decades is where the growth is all going to really be. It's got a very young population. As soon as the proper checks and balances are put in place and finance becomes easier, because right now there's a sort of Africa tax because they pay more interest in terms of anything they're borrowing internationally. I think as governance gets tighter over there, we're going to see that being the real growth sector. Low wages.
Yeah. I mean,
high opportunities.
they have a lot of resources, just materials in general and labor, and they're kind of poised. Like Lagos, Nigeria is on fire. That place is growing like crazy town. But yes, I do agree with you. We've been working with NHCC in Ghana and connecting them with construction technologies that they can use to it takes, I don't know if you know this, but in Ghana, it takes a homeowner to get a house built for them. They prepay for the home, and then it takes 3 years for that builder to deliver it. And on the back end of that delivery, they ask them for more money. Like this is how the process is in Ghana, and it's super corrupt. I mean, they'll tell you that that's kind of how this works, and it's really kind of so what they're trying to do is bring in a ton of technology in so they can compress that time frame in. Should not take 3 years to build a home. And so how can they do this faster and things like that? And there's also a modular construction technology company that does modular building, and the way that they're using tech is super cool. They have a deployment right now in Dubai, and they're doing this where they're building out hundreds of homes, and they're doing it super fast. And they have this pop-up plant that they can build, so they can go do a master plan community modularly, where you don't have to set up this big warehouse. You can kind of set it up temporarily, build all of it, and then you take it down. It's really kind of cool what the construction technology is doing for trying to solve these challenges that people are having in building. I think that's going to save the day at the end of the day. Modular will.
Really. And 80% of the houses in the southern hemisphere have not been built. 80% of the houses in the northern hemisphere are already there, and that's where the growth is all going to be. I think they're going to be very lucky if the southern hemisphere takes the best practices, looks really hard at sustainability, etc. It's where the future is. I think maybe Europe and US are now, as I think the Pope said once. What did he say? He said we're the old woman of the world. We're just gone beyond really invigorating ourselves. I think we're going to see a lot of change happening. I spent time last year in Vietnam, which I found fascinating. Just the energy of the country was beyond words. And I've seen in China since I first arrived in 2000, just vast energy and fast change happen there. Like you can't actually quite get your head around it. So
No,
I think if we all sort of take where what we've been building in Europe and building in the US, there's a big market for us to start exporting and really grow markets overseas. I think it's where the growth is really going to be the next decade or so.
yeah, no, for sure. All right, this is my segue over to David. What's happening in REIT world, David?
There was an interesting story that was published by Redfin this morning. They say this is indirectly for the residential REIT. Six of every 7 people with mortgages have an interest rate below 6%. The lock-in effect is starting to ease, they report. Their data that says here 85% of mortgage USO owners have a rate below 6%, down from a record 92.8% in the second quarter of 22. 76.1% have a rate below 5%. 57.4% have a rate below 4%, and 22% have a rate below 3%. So it's obviously interesting why we're seeing this settle in place type situation, because again, I don't want to trade a 3% mortgage for something that's with a 6 handle right now. Even if the Fed does cut rates in a couple of weeks, mortgage rates are not going to be declining 100 to 200 basis points anytime soon.
Right.
This is really interesting information, I thought. Again, Redfin, RealPage is its own separate story. We'll get to that in a second. But, Redfin really does a good job. Them and Zillow kind of highlighting what's going on. RealPage, they do a lot of the apartment rental pricing, algos, and software. The Department of Justice announced last week a lawsuit into the company. RealPage came out yesterday saying that they are going to work with the Department of Justice to try to fix the code. A couple of the apartment REITs have already settled to try to get away from this lawsuit. But I've been asked, what's the impact? And the answer is every single one of these rental landlords, office landlords, etc., use outside software. They build their own internal software, but every single guy knows what the property is renting for next door, across the street, quarter mile away, the brand new property that was just built. They know what the market is.
Right.
And I don't, again, not that I know anything, I don't think RealPage is colluding with these guys, especially when a lot of them are like, we don't need a RealPage. We have our own boots on the ground in all of these markets. We do it ourselves. But it is something to watch because, again, at the end of the day, does it save Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public an extra couple of $100 a month in rent because of this? Probably not.
No.
But I think it is something to be looking into. It would be great to get like a Jay Parsons or somebody into this Jay is no longer at RealPage, but to get somebody's thoughts on this, because again, you've got CoStar and RealPage, Redfin, Apartment List. There's 17 different data guys that are all doing the same thing. It just feels like RealPage is the one that's
Well, Yardi was too. So Yardi got sued also. The DOJ went after Yardi. So it was what they did was that they had these pricing revenue management tools is what Yardi and RealPage came out with. And I think what happened was it was initially supposed to be a guide. So as you're pricing rents, as you're doing your leases, lots of times what happens when we used to do it way back in the day where we would do a market survey, we would call up everybody would lie and they wouldn't tell you what the real rents were. And then, so you were trying to get really good data. So you knew you weren't missing out on opportunities, right? And so what happened is, and that's fine. It's supposed to be a guide to kind of help you lease better so you know where you're pricing everything. But I think what happened was the apartment owners or property managers started using it like the Bible. And so it was, you must price it here. It wasn't that it was like, oh, you have the flexibility. This is the suggested retail price, right? Or of the lease. It's like, no, you have to price it here. And so then all of a sudden, all the pricing was the same wherever you went, right?
2 points though. How much is the pricing actually changing day to day on a spot unit? You know what I mean? Like really on a
Yeah.
day-to-day
Minimal.
basis. Yeah,
Yeah.
negligible type
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Quarter to quarter,
Yes.
semi-annual rebound, that sort of thing. Yeah, you're going to see a movement. But if they're like, oh, we provide real-time pricing, how much is pricing really changing on a day-to-day basis? Which
True.
leads to question two. If RealPage is the 800-pound gorilla and they're the go-to company for this information, I think also kind of, let's say, backhanding this lawsuit, kind of playing into it, how much is RealPage charging for that right of information compared to everybody else?
Right.
And so are we really investigating them because they're charging so much more than everybody else is? Because again, they're the axe when it comes to this space as far as competition.
Yeah.
Or is it really they're colluding with Equity Residential and Avalon Bay to say, RealPage is saying, hey guys, you're charging this, you really need to charge this. And by the way, we're going to pocket this difference. We're going to make some money off of this. That shit isn't part of my language. That stuff isn't happening.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I don't know what kind of deals they struck, but usually it's not that.
It'd be great to get the apartment, like a publicly traded apartment REIT's perspective for somebody that's built out their own in-house platform to be like, here is what is different for us than for RealPage. Here is why this is proprietary to us, because I'm only in these 8 markets. I don't care what's happening in Seattle, Washington, because I'm only in Provo, Utah, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's why, again, a CoStar, some of these other service, Paul just went dark. Load shedding. Paul just experienced load shedding.
Experienced by PAO. I haven't been moving enough. My life.
Yeah. Oh, he has to do the occupancy center thing.
Exactly.
But seriously, like again, that's where a CoStar benefits because they're getting really into that micro level type of stuff, let's say.
Yeah. No, I got it. I'll ask Susan. She's with Elk Communities, and I think they're in about 8 states or whatever. Now that'd be
I'm
really
sure
good.
Elm has something proprietary in-house that they use.
They could, yeah.
Just a question. So we've been going on about this, quarter point base cut. Your rates in the US again are what? I know the 5% here. What are they in the US?
5 and the 2-year treasury, what, 5.5, 5.7? I can't remember.
So
it's just high. To me, it's high. I don't know. It's high.
On the P&L for any of your sort of major REITs, this 0.25% base cut, what is the impact on the P&L?
Nothing.
Because it seems to me this has been exaggerated. Like there's a lot of stuff happening, but like this quarter point's going to bring, it's just like.
Well, for a real estate owner, a quarter point doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, what it needs to happen. I mean, because basically your mortgage rates are kind of baked in. That's already happening. If you're not in fixed debt, you should have been a long time ago, or you're hitting your cap on your variable rate debt. Yeah. But it's the inflation of all the operational expenses. That's what they're trying to get. That's where we're getting our lunch eaten, like, and our butts handed to us, because just the margins between your operating expenses and the income you're bringing in, it's not covering. And so you're just having this crunch there to the point where people can't cover their mortgages, and they're having to put in capital every month to cover the mortgage. Because the operational expenses are so high, the insurance, payroll, the maintenance, everything, because it just inflated, especially insurance. It's like 6x what it used to be. So yeah.
Which is actually get back to the point, which is the US Property Council.
Yeah.
The more tech we put into these buildings and look at that ROI modeling of what if we put this in, how does my how my operation cost going to fall, how if I have a building that has all the sensors, is my insurance going to drop down? And this is what we keep on looking at. Like we're sitting here in a scenario where you, Amy, are absolutely on the cold face of this. You see far more PropTech things come along than even I do. But you sort of think, why are you guys not building these? Why is it not being built into the building on a faster rate?
Yeah, well, it hasn't traditionally until this point because the real estate owners have been fat and happy and lazy, and
Yeah.
it's part of it. I mean, there's a little glut in inefficiency because they didn't have to be efficient for the longest time, right? You just didn't have to. And now they're starting to get it, right? Because they're hurting. And so,
Yeah.
but it's this whole thing. Like if I was going to go sell to a real estate owner today in the US, which I am, that's in my everyday, I sell to real estate owners. I have to provide budget for them. Like they can't pay for me. They can't go do the out of pocket. It's too expensive. All they hear is money. Oh, I got to go spend more money. And they just refuse to do it unless I can say, I can instantly give that back to you within 30 to 60 days. Then that's a conversation they're willing to have because they need something to stop the pain, but they can't spend the money to stop the pain. So they're just hoping and praying and riding out the way where it'll get better again. That's where a lot of them are. I mean, that's just what's happening.
Exactly the same UK. It's
Yeah.
100% the same. Yeah, we have to build out ROI models on everything we do, and I keep on saying, I advise a lot of other companies. I mentor a lot of companies around here. I keep on trying to say nobody has a golden goose anymore. It just keeps on laying those golden eggs. You have to work out how to create the goose, not the egg, golden egg. You know, just change the way you work. But
Yeah, no.
yeah, I see things happening here which are pretty much precisely what you're saying there. It's a complete mind shift, and I also think the construction industry itself. I'm not particularly involved in the construction side, but my God, the inefficiencies there are biblical, and I think there's a lot of change has to happen. And I do think, as we probably discussed before, it needs a myriad of multiple technologies actually
Oh, yeah.
cohesively working together,
Yeah.
and then we'll get that happening.
Yeah, I think so until more real estate companies embrace this whole having somebody on the inside and tech teams on the inside and understanding, they need to understand, it's either that or somebody from the outside comes in and consults from them so they understand what their tech stack is. I mean, that whole gap, I think it needs to be kind of embraced by the real estate industry, and we'll see if they do. But it's either they'll get there faster if they do. I mean, they'll get there more efficient if they do, but yeah. I did want to ask David before we go, have you heard about this whole Blackstone CEO change? I mean, yeah, like what was the impetus behind that? Did the Blackstone CEO just say deuces, I'm out of here? I didn't hear the story.
I think it was, let's say, planned executive transition. I don't think it was, we need to make a change because the narrative has changed. We need to put a new face in. Frank, the outgoing CEO, has been there for a long, long time. So,
Yeah.
um, Blackstone is like many of these REITs and other companies where they have a deep bench, guys that have been in the team for 20, 30 plus years, ready to next man up type stuff. And so the incoming CEO is very seasoned at the company and very well respected.
Yeah. And so so it was an internal hire. They didn't hire anybody externally.
No, it
Not
was it was an internal.
It was internal hire. Not like the big to do with the Chipotle CEO being hired by Starbucks. Did y'all all hear that? And how much money is, and everybody's
Former
like,
Dallas guy, former Dallas
yeah,
guy turned around Pizza Hut.
yeah, exactly. And so they hired him, and everybody's complaining about his compensation package. It's like,
Well, if I'm him, again, results speak for themselves. And, again, I'm not saying he's got the Midas touch, but past performance is indicative of future results. Look at his past performance. Apparently,
yeah,
he's going to be worth the price tag. But
yeah,
I haven't been to I go to Chipotle about once a month or so. I
right.
mean, I don't know how much you can possibly change that concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I feel you.
what do? You offer more food? It's burritos, tacos, quesadillas, and bowls. Like, what else are you gonna do?
Afternoon tea?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Fish and chips? Like, what are we
Yeah.
gonna start doing there?
I know. I feel you. I think he did it. I think he did a good job of branding and positioning the company as like, it's all made fresh. People wanted, fresher food, or he didn't ever say it organic. None of that was ever organic, but you had this feel of, oh, this is better for me than the normal, fast food restaurant.
Watch a typical Chipotle commercial. What is the commercial? It's them preparing the food, right?
I know,
The
right?
guacamole. They start out the commercial saying, "Wait, You make your own guacamole in-house every single day, and they show a huge bowl of avocados and then making guacamole. Like,
I know,
there you
right?
go. The quality and freshness sells the product, right?
Right.
I think the problem that they're walking into, again, what do I know? You know how much a burrito costs these days? You know how much a friggin' Burger King hamburger costs these days? Like, that's the problem, is that,
Yeah,
food costs are going up, and what
I
cost
know.
$7, $8 just a couple years ago is more than double now.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah, but I do believe the CEO is worth it. I mean, I'm CEO. Of course I'm worth it. Paul's the CEO. Of course we're worth it. We're like leading our companies. I want to get paid.
You're deluding yourself, Amy, yeah.
I know, right? We're worth it, man. It's like the L'Oreal
Absolutely.
commercial. But yes, I totally agree with you. I would also, I think it's going to be kind of interesting, as I don't know if he planned this whole time, transition thing, other than who knows what was behind there. But I was just curious if Blackstone had like some secret plan. Those big REITs think they got some secret thing they want to execute, and
No, I mean,
yeah,
they're definitely on the acquisition pace. I mean, again, because
yeah,
they've done 2 REIT mergers this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more. We
mhm,
haven't really seen, I mean, let me rephrase that. There has been no public to public REIT mergers this year.
right,
Blackstone supposedly circling Retail Opportunity Investment Corp, ROIC, which is a West Coast strip center REIT. Great management team, great story there. But that came out, gosh, several weeks ago now, and
mhm,
yet nothing has been put to the tape yet. So is it
yeah,
because we're in a wait and see until after Labor Day? Have market conditions truly changed? I don't know. But, pivoting just a little bit, we've seen 10 plus REITs raise over almost $3.5 billion of new
that's
capital in the
no,
past 2 weeks. Realty Income is pricing a Euro notes offering today, a 2-part Euro notes offering that's going to be hundreds of millions, if not more. I mean, the borrowing window is open for these companies. No matter how you
right,
slice it and dice it, you can get money. And oh, by the way, we know what the rate is. The rate's going to start with the 5 hand. No matter
yeah,
how you look
exactly,
at it, you're borrowing money at 5% right now. Even
yes,
if the Fed cuts rates 25, 50 basis points, whatever it's going to be, that number is going to be with a 5. It might go to a high 4, but we're not going to see, again, this free money give a bonanza like we saw during COVID. But if you're in the market to get money, it's there for you. The
mhm,
lending window is open.
yeah,
Therefore, you can put that money to work and go buy companies, go buy properties. We're wheeling and dealing. So,
mhm,
as you always say, what's your last bullet point? What do you want to leave on? Buy REITs, because I'm
yeah.
telling you, positioning today for what's coming tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, they're prepping. They know. I mean, that's always the best thing, right? And
Especially right now, because we're right ahead of Labor Day. So it's not like
right,
anybody's doing any deals. What they're doing is pencils are being sharpened. The
yeah,
deals are being worked on behind the scenes right now,
mhm,
dotting the I's, crossing the T's. And we're going to see, again, not that I know anything, but
yeah,
we're probably going to see a flush of stuff coming out, after next Tuesday over the month of September. And the reason being, there's a tight window because October then starts REIT earnings season, and therefore people kind of go into silent mode. So I'm working on a
ah,
conference right now in Chicago in the middle of October, trying to get a couple of REITs to show up. And like, we can't. We're in quiet period. It's earnings season. You're like,
yeah.
could you pick a worse time to be doing this conference? And that's how things work.
Hey, David, if it's any consolation, I did a conference on what I didn't realize was Thanksgiving Day in America. Anyway, I was doing a UK US, and nobody told me it's Thanksgiving's Day. So yeah, I mean, you can mess it. I've messed up more than you're about to,
That's interesting. A
That was
Thanksgiving. I mean,
interesting.
hey,
That was a big oversight.
there's people that have had too many tipples and they're looking for something, to get away from grandma and grandpa. So maybe
I don't think we oversubscribed that day, put it that way, yeah.
I did. There was another story that came out, and this was in retail land, and so Walmart, who is the biggest shareholder of JD.com, which is a Chinese e-commerce firm, sold
Yeah.
its entire stake in that firm, and JD
Sorry,
bought
in
it back.
JD.
Yes, they sold it. And so it raised about so Walmart then profited like $3.6 billion in the sale. So I'm like, all right, what's Walmart up to? Like, why? I don't, this is, I mean, selling part of it, but the whole thing. So it's either they're very bearish on China or doing something. I don't, but I thought that was super interesting. It came out in Axios today.
Do what I'll do. I'll get on my phone to my Chinese people and I'll find out what's behind all this for you and fill you up next week, okay?
That sounds good. Yeah, I thought that was, yeah, it was the last couple of days. It came out on the 21st in Axios was last week. But yeah, I was shocked by the whole stake. I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy town. And so they've been down, a part of it is stop being weirdo. But yes, in the retail front, that was big news. That was big news for sure. The other thing too is that what I'm seeing, this is anecdotal, this is not a news story, but I'm starting to see, which is super cool on this front, is Walmart embracing, they're already very tech forward as the technology goes. But one of the members of the US Tech Council, Prop Tech Council, actually Walmart has an accelerator. I don't know if y'all know that, but Walmart has its own retail tech accelerator that people can go to Bentonville, Arkansas, and they can be a part of this accelerator for 8 to 10 weeks. And that's how Walmart brings new tech in. I thought that was super interesting. I hadn't heard of that yet, but apparently it's a new thing. And I'm starting to see the New York City Department of Buildings is doing the same thing. I think more and more people are starting to understand that they have to get into the tech game. And if they're a big, retailer like Walmart, it's a good thing for them for sure. But I didn't know that they had a tech accelerator. So that was news to me. I thought that was kind of
What's
interesting.
actually interesting about Walmart specifically is it's one of the only retailers in the US that has so little data on its customers. It's incredible because you look around all the other ones, they all have a lot. Like we used to do all the data analysis for Safeway, for Super Value, for Stop and Shop, for CVS. They all have a loyalty card. Walmart doesn't have a loyalty card, so Walmart does not know who each basket belongs to. And let me tell you, that is the secret sauce. And I've always been shocked how Walmart has never brought in a loyalty card because that's when you really know everything you need to know about Amy.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah, because we used to run 2 years of numbers on every single customer's basket on all those retailers. So we knew exactly what you bought, when you bought it, why you bought it. There was nothing we didn't know. And all we had to do as a company was move that needle very slightly. That was it. That was my first AI company back in 2003.
That's a
And
little creepy. That's a little creepy, Paul. It's very
it's
creepy.
incredible. Honestly, the data is just unbelievable. You literally know what day the month people get paid. You know how they cook. You know if they're shopping in another supermarket based on the basket. So what we used to see a lot in Safeway was we had perimeter buyers who went around the perimeter and all the fresh bakery and the fruit and veg, which was always outstanding. But then we knew they probably went into Walmart and bought all the goods in the middle aisles elsewhere. So the data, it's always shocked me how Walmart's got so successful without actually knowing individual data to do that direct marketing.
Yeah, well, yeah, no wonder they're having an accelerator to kind of figure it out. Just maybe they got, I mean, I don't know, maybe they've been fat. Well, they are the largest retailer. Maybe they didn't have to. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Kroger and Safeway were in my view anyway, back a decade ago, Kroger and Safeway were the two that really were the most sort of highly digitalized and formed retailers out there. They were on the ball.
Yeah. That's interesting. Very, very cool. Good to know. The last we've got a couple of more minutes. The last story I wanted to go through was and I don't know what's happening, but we're going to talk a little bit more on markets and how regional markets are. So the top performing industrial market for the first half of 2024 was Denver, Colorado, which I thought was interesting. It's up 181%. In markets for growth, industrial growth was Denver, Colorado. And the worst performing market was Houston, which is, my home state, which I don't know what's up with that. And then the same thing over on retail strip centers. The largest growth market was San Francisco, California, which I find interesting, is up 228% in San Francisco. And then one of the worst performing metro markets for retail was Philadelphia, which was down 60%. I don't know what that's all about, but you know, which is
But
really
gee, is this why? Is this because no one's going to the office in San Francisco, so they're out shopping all day?
I maybe I don't know.
Or working from home, yeah.
I just
Um,
find it interesting, these weird anomalies of different.
Crazy. You're like a couple of percent, but like that's fast. That's
I know.
crazy.
I know that is crazy town. I just thought, and hotel sales have dropped. Obviously, there's not a lot of hotel selling, but I just thought, my goodness, where that's out of left field. Denver, Colorado, 181%. I don't know. I mean, Denver's cool. I like Denver. I mean, it's great.
Lot of land, lot of
Yeah.
available land to develop out there. I think that plays into it, especially
Yeah.
if you think about from the airport to the city, you know, how much open
Oh, on
space
the east
there
side.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm
There,
not
I mean, there
surprised
is
by
a ton of land, but in Colorado, the hardest part about developing in Colorado, because I was in that state, is water rights. I mean, they fight for water every single time. So you can't really, like, you go and look and people will try to sell land, and everybody understands is, okay, where's the water? I mean, that's the first question out of every developer's mouth in Colorado is, where's the water and how much water rights do I have? And will the city allow me to, build something there? I mean, you have to fight through all these issues. That's the very first question everybody asks. And then if they have water problems in certain areas, it impedes development because of water. It's just crazy. I never thought of that. And, we're from Texas. We never we don't even think of it. Well, yeah, we'll just plug into the water. No big deal, right? In Colorado, it's a deal. It's a big deal.
that's really
Well, we
interesting.
have come to the end of our hour. Look at that, y'all. We are here. So,
Right.
been a great show. I will, Mr. Sheedy, I'll give you a couple minutes since you have to duck out early. So why don't you say your goodbye, do an outro, tell everybody who you are, what you're doing, and what are your parting thoughts?
Well, it's just been emotional. It's been amazing. Another hour with you, Amy and David. It's just all a man can ever ask for. So we're unified. We're trying to bring common sense to.
You're dark.
Load shedding.
Oh God. Timing is everything in business, they say. Nothing. There we go. I'm back again. Bring technology to businesses, make them safer and more secure, and save you money. And it's always great, Amy. It's always wonderful. Actually, one quick thing can I just say? We had a horrendous fire in London yesterday. You probably know about the Grenfell fire 7 years ago. The exact same thing happened in London yesterday. The entire building burnt to the ground, and the alarms ever went off again.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for one resident knocked on every single person's door and managed to get me out, there'd be multiple deaths. How 7 years later, after all that's happened in the inquiries, nobody is making things change? And I tell you what, I'm right about to press send on an article right now on LinkedIn, and I'm calling it out.
That can't happen again.
Calling it out. Okay, listen, everybody, it's been fantastic. I have to run. Thank you again.
See
Bye
you.
now.
All right, Dave.
Bye, Reeds.
Bye, Reeds. That's what you're gonna say. That's awesome.
We'll see you next time. Have a good holiday.
You too. We'll see you. This has been a show of the U.S. PropTech Council. We're so glad that you were here. We're sponsored by Lerner Associates and my company, Facilimax. If you are interested in the U.S. PropTech Council, learning more about innovation in real estate or PropTech in general, please visit the PropTechCouncil.com, and we'd love to have you join us at a future event. We will be at Blueprint coming up in September. We also are hosting a 2-day startup hackathon as part of New York City Real Estate Tech Week, and we will be at CRE Tech. And our event, which is happening at South by Southwest next year in Austin, Texas, y'all. March 9th, 2025 is our PropTech Americas event, and we'd love to have you there. Y'all have a great week.